Hello, are we live? Hi, everybody. I think we're live. Let me just make sure. If you're here, I'm so glad you're here. I'm going to talk today about a little bit more about what's going on in the world. It's been a rough week. And, it's just a lot of lessons have been happening for me, and I'm sure for a lot of you out there. And there's just more to talk about. So we're here. I've got more material to share from what I learned in my master's degree. I did a lot with cultural sensitivity, with cultural proficiency. Over a year of my study was devoted to understanding how to truly be integrative with education and inclusive of all walks of life and all cultural backgrounds. So I do have a slideshow to share with you today. Class is in session. It'll be about an hour. I do have the PowerPoint that I'll share at the end as well that has all the links in there. I do encourage anybody out there who is learning and who is trying to understand what this whole movement is, watch this, share this, because this is information that I think a lot of people get very defensive about because they just don't know what it is. And I say this in a non-inflammatory way. It is truly coming from a place of ignorance, meaning you just don't have the information, and that's okay. This is, in a way, kind of a brave new world where for years it has been the way we've grown up, the way our families have talked, the way that we all looked at the way people interact. And now all of a sudden, a lot of people are being, I'll say it for lack of a better term, kind of slapped in the face with this Black Lives Matter when they're like, but I thought all lives mattered. And there's a gap in understanding here. So I know a lot of you who are already these social justice warriors right alongside me, and a couple other people that I'm associated with. I've seen you on social media. Like, I see you. We're all doing the work. We're all having the hard conversations. We're all getting out of our comfort zones and learning. It's tough, but we're doing this work because we see there needs to be a change, and we're driving it forward. And it is very easy to get afraid of that. It's very easy to throw your hands up in the air and be like, well, I just don't understand. I've seen a lot of people say all lives matter in the last week, and I have been calmly educating, if they're willing to listen, that saying that right now is very tone deaf to what's happening in all 50 states. We've got a revolution on our hands. It's the beginnings of what I've been calling a civil rights movement. All 50 states are I guess hosting or holding protests over the death of George Floyd. So here we are trying to make sense of it, and I think a lot of the white people of the world are baffled by it because this is something that people of color have been living with for forever. And now all of a sudden it's coming into our living rooms. Literally. So many TV stations have been doing, I think 8 minutes and 40 seconds of silence for George Floyd. He couldn't breathe for 8 minutes and 40 some seconds. Companies all over the world are coming out and speaking up for this and saying, we demand justice. This has to stop. So if you're baffled, or if you're not understanding, or if you need some help, please stay and watch, because I have some information for you. I'm not here to belittle you, to make you feel bad. I'm not here to actually, I am here to lecture you. I was gonna say I'm not here to lecture you, but I actually am here to give a lecture. So not in a bad way though. I'm just here to give information. So I hope that that it is helpful, and I hope that if you know someone who could benefit from this, that you share this content. So let's go ahead and let me just make sure. I have a squirrel brain, so I just want to make sure I got everything that I need to off of my opening remarks. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about 6 points on the cultural continuum, or cultural proficiency continuum. 6 different points of understanding that you might fall into and what they all mean. This is how you get better. seeing where you are and where you need to go, seeing what's behind you and what's in front of you. And then maybe you're already at being culturally proficient. Yay. And if not, you can help others get there by understanding the 6 different points along the continuum. So all of this is taken from my textbook, Culturally Proficient Instruction. This is designed to be for instructors, for teachers, but that doesn't mean that we can't adapt it to our purposes now, because we're not in a classroom. But I mean, let's get a little cheesy and say it's the classroom of the world, right? Like, we can use this information on how to be culturally proficient in our daily lives. So that's what I'm presenting to you. This is not an opinion piece. I want to be very clear about that. This is not like Courtney's opinion is you should do this. No, this is literally information from a reputable source that is a peer-reviewed, literary, educational source, okay? I will show you lots of media and resources to help you understand systemic racism and a little bit more about white privilege, like we talked about last time on Monday. So this is like, we have this momentum going. We have this, I'll say, revolution in, I'm calling it a revolution. I hope that it turns into one, not in a bad way, but just we need change in all 50 states. So we have this momentum going. What do we do with it? Like, once the flashiness of it goes away, and I don't mean that in like it's a good flashy, but just like you're seeing it spread everywhere. It's on the news, it's on your Facebook feed, everybody's talking about it. Once that dies down, what do we do? Once that dies down, how do we keep this moving forward? Because this is going to be a marathon. This is not a sprint. We are in the beginning. We're in mile 1 right now. And if you're pissed off like I am, I laughed because I'm like, it's a bad thing to say, but really, like, if you're finally like, I've had enough, I'm over this, we need to do something now. If you're there, or if you're getting there, this is the time where we need to kind of center ourselves and be like, we have a long haul to go. This is not going to be over tomorrow. And how do we affect change? So what I will share with you is how to do something and how to just keep learning and give you all these resources. So let's talk about getting uncomfortable. You have to get uncomfortable to learn. And this is the hardest part about all of it, where we don't understand. Having this skin color, we can't possibly understand what people of color are going through. We just can't. We don't have the experiences. It's not our reality. We are viewing life through our lens of, and I say this again, not as a derogatory term, but our frame of reference with our whiteness. And that is from our own culture. Everybody in the world sees their reality through their own lens. When you see somebody do something, you imagine, oh, they must be doing it because of XYZ, because that's what you would do. So when we see other people struggle, it's hard to understand if we can't empathize, which brings me to my second point here. You have to empathize with people of color to truly understand. We have to read and consume media, have conversations, use resources to start to understand the struggle that they are going through. I know, the reason why this has gained so much traction with George Floyd's death and not with Breonna Taylor and not with all of the other people, unfortunately, that have been murdered or killed unjustly by, let's say, police brutality and other racist means. The reason why this has garnered so much attention is because finally we can empathize. There was no question that what happened to George Floyd was murder. And as of right now, all 4 officers that were involved have been charged and arrested. So that's amazing that finally there's justice for him. I shouldn't say finally, it was really relatively quickly. There's still not justice for the other victims, but we have to keep moving forward, and to do that we have to empathize. When George Floyd died, everybody could empathize with it because everybody saw that man being held down on the ground and asking for his mom. Everybody saw it. And I don't mean to keep bringing it up and throwing salt in the wound, but guys, we have to understand that empathizing is how we can form that connection to finally wrap our heads around what these people have been going through for years, what they've been trying to tell us for years, that we just have been like, yeah, okay, you're fine. Which is not what everybody did, but by and large, as a whole, that's what the entirety of the dominant culture was doing. You're fine. It's not that bad. White people died too. You're fine. All lives matter. You're fine. So when we can finally empathize, when we can finally connect and be like, oh my God, that could have been me. That could have been my dad or my brother, or there was no question that it was an unjust murder. And that empathizing is what makes us understand, right? So to be able to empathize more, and not just with the George Floyd death, we have to use our resources. We have to study this whole thing. We have to see what the struggle is for people of color. And it's hard. It's hard. There is so much behind it. There's so much to unpack, and I don't have time or honestly the training to do all of it. But I can share the resources, and I can teach you what I know. So to my last point here, when we can truly empathize, we can really help. We have to get comfortable to do it. Some perspective. This one hit me in the feels, so I want to share it with you. It's a privilege to learn about racism instead of experiencing your whole life. Think about that and read it again. It is a privilege to learn about racism instead of experiencing it your whole life. So if you this week have been like, oh man, is this how it really is all the time? You're privileged. You are. I am too. And it's okay. It doesn't make us bad. It doesn't make us guilty. It just means we have to understand where we are and where other people are. So here comes the hardest part of the lecture. Check your white privilege. I talked about it in my last session that I did on Monday. We took a quiz, and we did a little talking about it. Besides that, this is a video that illustrates very clearly what white privilege is. So let's go and watch this real quick together. Wait for it.
Check your privilege edition. Put a finger down if you have been called a racial slur. Put a finger down if you've been followed in a store unnecessarily. Put a finger down if someone has crossed the street to avoid passing you. Put a finger down if you've had someone clench their purse in an elevator with you. Put a finger down if you've had someone step off of an elevator to keep from riding with you. Put a finger down if you've been accused of not being able to afford something expensive. Put a finger down if you have had fear in your heart when being stopped by the police. Put a finger down if you have never been given a pass on a citation that you deserved. Put a finger down if you have been stopped or detained by police for no valid reason. Put a finger down if you have been bullied solely because of your race. Put a finger down if you have been denied service solely because of the color of your skin. Put a finger down if you've ever had to teach your child how not to get killed by the police. Any fingers left? That's privilege.
So that's privilege. There's a lot to talk about with it, and I could give you a lot of other examples. There's a lot of resources that I'll share with you, but it's literally just again, to kind of reiterate from Monday, it doesn't mean that because you're white, you have it easy. It doesn't mean that because you're white, you're rich. It doesn't mean that because you're white, everything is perfect for you. Nobody's saying that. What it means is that you are not automatically discriminated against because of the color of your skin. So a lot of the conversations I've had this week with people, to talk with them and educate them as much as I can from my living room on my cell phone, on Facebook, social justice warrior online. A lot of the conversations have been, well, let me give you one example. I'm a hairstylist by trade. I've done a lot of other things, but I've been a hairstylist since 2002, and I'm on a bunch of hairstyling forums. One of them is Pulp Riot Artists, which is the Pulp Riot's a company that does like all the Vivids, like the super fun, like the best company out there in my opinion for Vivids. And there was a comment or a post on this forum that was a very very nicely worded post about, hey, with everything going on this week, let's talk about why there aren't more people of color in the Pulp Riot educator family. Why don't we see black hair being celebrated? Why don't we see black artists? Why don't we see Hispanic people, or any other people of color in the collective? Where are they? And it was a very, like I said, very nicely worded post, but the amount of people that, one, put all lives matter hashtags on it, two, did the little gifs or gif, however you're supposed to say it, of like, there's one of a girl with like black hair and bangs, and she's like, and like the Robert Downey Jr. rolling the eyes. A lot of people posted those, and I went through and I politely said, hey man, your white privilege is showing. The fact that you can roll your eyes at this and be completely indifferent to the suffering of all of these people. They're rising up in all 50 states, and you're not listening because you can walk away from it and you choose to use your privilege to excuse you from the conversation. One woman was like, okay, can we just stop talking about race? I'm tired of it. I'm tired of hearing about it. And I politely commented on hers and replied to it and said, we really can't. Not anymore. Time for that is over. And it's really hard to have those conversations. It's exhausting to have those conversations, but that's the work that needs to be done to affect change. So check your privilege. All right, what's your accountability? This is the other piece of it. So you have to understand where people of color are coming from. You have to understand where you're coming from with being privileged. And then you have to take it all into account and think about, how are you holding yourself accountable to do something? You're here, you're watching me right now because you want to do something. You wouldn't be watching me. So what's your accountability? What are you doing? Being silent takes the side of the oppressor. I used to roll my eyes at that statement because I didn't understand it, but it's very, very true. If there is something going on in the world and you choose not to acknowledge it, you are no different than the people doing the oppressing. I can see that now that all of this is going on through the lens that I've now got with being able to empathize a little bit more. I can see that. If you can't see that yet, maybe you have a little bit of work to do and a little bit of research to do and a little bit of soul searching to do to figure it out. Now I meant to say this at the beginning and I didn't get to say it because I got sidetracked by my own brain. I can't sit here and teach you or tell you or force you to empathize with other people. Nobody can. Why do I care so much about this? You might be thinking to yourself, why is she going out of her way to make these videos and make these PowerPoints and sit here for an hour and talk to me about white privilege? Why do I care? Why do I care? I care because I care about people. I care because I'm tired of people getting hurt. I'm tired of all of this. And if you don't feel that way, I can't help you. It's on you. On you to understand how to empathize with other people and how to care about other people. So I'm not saying that to be rude. I'm not saying that to be harsh. But like literally I can't teach you that. If you don't care, you don't care, and that's on you. If you do care and you want to learn some more, stick around, I got more for you. All right, so you want to help. Hooray, the blue point there. Hooray! What can you do? What are you doing? Are you talking to people? Are you calling them out, as uncomfortable as that may be? Are you sharing resources? Are you learning? Are you having conversations with people of color to start that process of learning how to empathize? What are you doing to help this movement? You want to fight? You want to be better? You want to make this work? What are you doing? I've got resources for you at the end of the show. All right, so here's the meat and potatoes of this presentation. I just gotta move. I'm sitting on the bed here, and my 36-year-old legs don't like being cross-legged this long, I guess. So cultural proficiency. There are 6 points on a continuum of cultural proficiency, and these 6 points, most everybody falls into one of them. This book that I took it from, again, is about instruction and about education, but it's also about organizations and like thinking about like a university as an organization. Excuse me. So a lot of the literature, and I should say a lot of the words you'll see in this will say like organization. That's what it's referring to. So take that as you will. Like, you know, it does refer to companies, it does refer to schools, it does refer to all of those things. So 6 points on the continuum. This continuum provides a context by which you can describe organizations and individuals. It provides language and understanding to have a meaningful discussion. The 6 points from left to right are cultural destructiveness, incapacity, blindness, precompetence, competence, and then proficiency. Let's take a look at all of them. Cultural destructiveness. This is where we just want to eliminate differences. We're not different. Any policy, practice, or behavior that effectively eliminates all vestiges of others' cultures. Things that fall into this would be like systems of legalized oppression, slavery, Jim Crow laws, American Indian reservations, internment camps for Japanese Americans in World War II, etc. Legalized oppression. And then things like inaccurate textbooks, not highlighting the oppression of people of color and the true horrors of slavery throughout history. And this quote kind of helps sum that up. What caused racism in the past perpetuates it today, and how it might be reduced in the future. In other words, we have the power to change it if we pay attention, if we pay attention to history. The oppression of POC and other non-dominant groups in the U.S. damages society. At present, the dominant society often appears to be unaware of the need to adapt and respond to the many incidents of oppression that exist. This denial tears at the moral fiber of U.S. society. So, in my opinion, this is my only opinion that I'll kind of put forth here. Seeing this and hearing all of these, maybe not this one as much because that's been abolished, but there's still some stuff going on. I kind of think this is where the country is at today. I kind of think that this cultural destructiveness, where we just want to do away with anything that says anybody's different, I think that's kind of where, as a whole, the United States is at, unfortunately. I could be wrong, but that's kind of my take on it. Cultural incapacity. This is where we demean differences. So any policy, practice, or behavior that presumes one culture is superior to others. Oop, I didn't want to do that. I just didn't look at that anymore. There we go. Okay. So demeaning differences looks like people practicing cultural incapacity behave in ways that disempower people who differ from them culturally, like tolerating differences without valuing diversity. So things like, yeah, you're different than me, but I'm not going to listen to it. I don't want anything to do with it. Making policies based on a token acceptance of differences. An example would be members of the dominant culture relate to others based on negative stereotypes, like a female learner saying she's no good in math because girls don't do well in math. Reluctance to work with member of differing race because a perception they will be low performing. Stereotypes based on a person speaking a different language as their primary language. And excusing low classroom performance of a member of the non-dominant group by pointing to the one high performer in that same group. So that's not cool. Cultural blindness. This is where we just dismiss differences. You're different, but I don't see it. quote, I don't see color. I've heard this a lot this week too. So if you fall in this boat, it's okay, because there's learning you can do. There's things you can do to get yourself out of this. Because, and this is a little confusing. I understand where it would be confusing, because you're like, but we're not supposed to see color. Here's the thing though, when you don't see color, you don't celebrate the differences. You don't see the struggle. You can't empathize, because what you're effectively doing is squishing that person back into a little box you want them to be in. And you're not looking at how they're really different, and how their lives have been different, and how maybe their skin color has affected their lives, and not necessarily in a good way. So when you say, I don't see color, that is literally dismissing any differences that you might have from that other person. So cultural blindness is defined as any policy, practice, or behavior that ignores existing cultural differences or that considers them inconsequential. This is, according to the textbook, and I will agree with it, it's the most vexing point on the continuum. Because people who are culturally blind mean well. I honestly believe that they mean well. They're trying to say, I don't see you as any different than me. We all bleed the same. We're all the same on the inside. True. But when you do that, you're dismissing the struggle. And there is a struggle. And if you're missing that, still go back to the white privilege conversation. And we need to go back to history, and we need to look at what people of color have gone through. We need to look at what they've lived through and what they still suffer today at the hands of police, at the hands of people who are racist against them. There was a video that I posted this week. Michael Che, one of the writers on Saturday Night Live, he's a black man, and he was on Seth Meyers' show, his new show that's socially distant through Zoom or whatever. And Seth Meyers did an interview with Michael Che, and Che said that he doesn't call 911. He said he's never called 911. And Seth Meyers said, well, I'd like to learn about that. Like, why? What is your feeling on that? And he said, well, I just don't feel there for me. And that is what people of color go through. They have seen so much violence against their people. They have seen so much killing and just terrible things happening for no reason, that they are literally afraid to call 911. Think about that. Let that sink in. So when you say, if you're in this group and you say, I don't see color, how do you think that makes your black friend feel? I don't see your struggle. I don't see you as any different. You're just like me. So think about that and learn from that, and get uncomfortable feeling that whatever you're feeling, that anger bubbling up, or that maybe that shame or that guilt of, oh my gosh, did I do that to my friend? It's okay if you did, as long as you learn from it. It's okay if this is something that you were unaware of, because I feel like we all go through life thinking we know everything, thinking we don't need resources, we don't need to learn things. I don't need help. I can do it. I'm a grown-ass woman. I'm independent. We all need help. We all need people around us and resources, and just reaching out and using your community. It takes a village, and right now, use your village. Lean on people that can teach you. Use your resources to learn. Right, to this middle point here. People in this group often fail to see the effect that they have on others. Cultural blindness really just makes me think of, like, you got your blinders on. Like, nope, I don't see color. I don't see what I'm doing to you. I don't see that I'm hurting you because I'm just like you. So it's, that's why they say it's the most vexing point, where it's, you're trying to help, you want to help, but in trying to do so, it actually ends up hurting the cause more. So to this last point here, by not seeing differences and treating everyone alike, one presumes that the dominant cultural norms are beneficial for all. So that's also problematic, because people of color are struggling to fit in this dominant cultural world that we've created. everywhere they look, they see, examples on TV and media and everywhere else. If you didn't watch my video on Monday, I talked a lot about that, where we are the dominant culture in the US. Other countries is not the same. Obviously, we're talking about the United States. But in the United States, the dominant culture is a white person, predominantly male, is the dominant like cultural norm. That's what we base everything off of. Everything, education and corporations, and like everything is run by white men. And again, I'm not saying that as a bad thing, but what I'm saying is people of color don't fit into that. They're marginalized. They're oppressed by the systems put into place. So this is so hard to wrap your head around. I know, because I've done this work and I've come to these conclusions. And it's tough. Like when I read this book, I will tell you, this was, let me think, 5 years ago I took this class. I rolled my eyes a lot. I didn't understand. And I was coming at it from a very, very defensive point of view, where I was like, well, I'm not doing that. I was here. I was very much here. Everybody's like me. I don't see it. We're all the same on the inside. We all bleed red. And I didn't realize how hurtful it was. We can't treat everybody alike because everybody's not alike. We've not all had the same struggles. So, all right. The melting pot falls into this too. This is something that we've heard forever. Like since I've been a kid, we talked about the melting pot of the United States and how all the cultures are melting together and it's great and we're all becoming one country. The problem with it, it's culturally blind. It doesn't see or celebrate differences in cultures. Until we can do that, until we can celebrate the Hispanic communities and the Black communities and the Indian Americans and the American Indian, like Cherokee versus like from India. Until we can celebrate and see all of those differences and realize that just because they're different from me, and take that fear out of it, until we can see that, we'll be stuck in this cultural blindness spot as a country. And that's a lot of what's doing the oppression. Thinking that everybody's alike when we're not. Okay? So really quickly, I'm kind of throwing this in. The book talks about it, so I pulled this graphic from, I saw this online this week, and I really liked it. So equality versus equity. So equality is having identical privileges, status, or rights, regardless of the individual's needs, current situation, or context. Okay? So equality would be like a white person and a black person having identical privileges, identical status, identical rights. That's not the case right now. White people do not have the same as black people. We have more privileges as far as not having to worry about being pulled over by police, not having to worry about being judged unfairly when we put in a mortgage application, being able to walk down a street with a book in your hand and not people assuming, or cops assuming it's a gun. Okay? We are not identical with privileges. We are not identical with status, because more often than not, and I shared this statistic in my last talk on Monday, there are, let me see if I can get this right from memory, 80% of managerial positions in corporations are held by white people. And it's like 40%, and I'm not going to remember it. It's like 80% of this and then 40% of something. I forget exactly what it is. But the point, even though I can't remember the stats, is that by and large, it is the white male who's in charge of everything. So it's, you don't have white men and black men being at the same status. Rights are not the same either, unfortunately. They're supposed to be. But it has been proven over and over and over, the narrative over and over that we keep seeing is that the rights of black people are not the same as the rights of white people, because they're being detained unfairly, they're being charged unfairly, they're being killed on the damn concrete for nothing, for writing or for passing a fake 20. That is not the same. That would have never happened to a white person. Never. So that is equality. Or rather, that's not equality. But that's what equality is supposed to be, right? Having identical privileges, status, and rights. Equity refers to being just, impartial, and fair taking into consideration individual differences. So equity is like, okay, so I'm up here and you're down here with where we're at with privileges. So because you're down here, let's help you out a little bit. Because to be equitable, to make it a fair fight, a little bit needs to change. So that means all kinds of different things that I do not have time or training to get into. But that is the main difference between equality and equity. And then I really like these other ones, justice and inequality and what it looks like. So this is a great, and again, I'll share this PowerPoint at the end so you can share it or take a look at it a little closer if you need to. Oh, by the way, everything I share in this PowerPoint is from this book, as I've said a couple times. If you see something else, like right here, you see Boyer, 1983, that was quoted in here, and it's from Boyer. So I took the reference from the back of the book, so that it was pointing back to the person who actually said it. So unless you see something like this Boyer 1983, you can assume it's taken from this, because I didn't want to cite it every single time. All right, cultural precompetence. Now we're getting somewhere. We respond inadequately to the dynamics of difference, but we're almost there. People and organizations who recognize that their skills and practices are limited when interacting with other cultural groups. They may have made some changes in their approaches to the issues arising from diversity, but they are aware that they need assistance and more information. So now the spectrum is kind of broken into two parts. The first part that we just covered before this point, the first 3 points were like, you're not getting it. These next 3, the second half of the continuum, is like, okay, we're getting there, we're starting to see it, and it goes up and up and up. Okay, so this is like the first of 3. So they are culturally pre-competent. They know they don't know everything. They know they need help. They respond inadequately to the dynamics, but they at least see the differences. So what does that mean? Shared a little story with you here. So let me read this to you. The chemistry professor's story. A chemistry professor at State University, Mapleview campus, learned that many of his students were immigrants from Portugal. Even though he knew that most of them spoke English fluently, he also knew that they took great pride in their cultural heritage. This was a very new culture to him, even though he had taken a semester of Portuguese in addition to his 3 years of Spanish language in high school. In an attempt to establish rapport with the students, he decided to pronounce the word Portuguese with what he thought would be an appropriate accent. Unfortunately, his Portuguese had a poor Spanish accent, and what the students heard was a word that sounded a lot like an ethnic slur for Portuguese people. Womp womp. He tried. And that's the great thing, is like, we're getting there, like he at least knows he needs to include them and make them feel included in the conversation, and to point out and celebrate the differences. That's awesome. He just needed a little bit of help. He probably needed to work on his accent. So I wouldn't call this a fail. I think literally you have to go through all of these points on the continuum. You might not start all the way at the bottom, but you have to go through the points on the continuum to learn. It's just like anything else. Like, you can't start running one day and all of a sudden be able to run a marathon the second day. You have to work on it, just like everything else in life. So cultural competence. Now this is the 5th point out of 6. Cultural competence is where you engage with the differences using the essential elements as standards, essential elements of being completely proficient in cultural sensitivity. So cultural competence is defined as any policy, practice, or behavior that uses the essential elements of cultural proficiency as the standard for the individual or the organization. So these essential elements are listed as assessing culture, valuing diversity, managing the dynamics of difference, adapting to diversity, and then institutionalizing cultural knowledge, not ignoring it, but bringing it into whatever the institution or whatever the person is, the thing that makes them them, right? So cultural competence is almost there. Cultural proficiency, this is where we all would love to be, and this is the goal. If we could all get here as a country, people of color would not feel marginalized anymore. They would feel celebrated. They would feel included. And we wouldn't be having riots, probably, because they would feel understood and heard and appreciated. So, cultural proficiency is esteem and learn from differences as a lifelong practice. So, organizations and people who esteem culture, who know how to learn about individual and organizational cultures, and who interact effectively with a variety of cultural groups. This is not a destination, but rather a way of being. It's a lifestyle. It's not like you get there and then you just stop working on it. You have to keep working on it. It is an ongoing and unfolding process as you learn about yourself, your organization, and the people around you. It doesn't mean you know all there is to know about diversity and inclusion. That's why they say you have to keep learning. It means you have learned how to learn. This is the point. If you get to this point, this is where you'll be able to take a step back and be like, oh man, there's somebody I've never encountered before from a culture I'm completely unaware of. What do I need to know? What do I need to do? Now, I won't sit here and say I'm culturally proficient, but I think I'm pretty close after all the study that I've done. An example I could share with you that would give you an example of cultural proficiency that I've had is I do a lot of work with my wellness groups online. I do a lot on Instagram, and I reach out to a lot of people. A lot of people reach out to me, and I recently was talking with a fellow mama of little ones. We kind of connected over, she shared a picture of her little kid who's about the same age as my twins, and I reached out. I was like, oh my gosh, so cute, and she reached back out to me and she's like, hey, what are you doing for your stuff? I'm doing the same thing. And it was a really cool conversation about like just sharing what we're both up to. And she's like, I would love to work with you. I was like, oh, that's cool. Where are you from? And she said, Botswana. And I was like, I cannot, because my company that I work with only does the US and the UK and a couple other countries, not the south of Africa. So she's totally different from me. She's in Botswana. And I knew just based on the way she spoke, she had different words that she used in different places. Like I could just tell, she would say like, in my country, we XYZ. She shared some examples with me of, because I was telling her about like my life. It was like, I stay at home and my husband works and I do the coaching thing online, and like we're doing okay. Like I was just kind of openly sharing about what we do. And she shared back with me that things are like way different down there, where she's at in Botswana. And just this conversation of like, this is where I'm at, this is where you're at. And I had just, I think it was right, I forget when this would have been because I'm still very uneducated on it, but it was right around the time that Governor Pritzker went on Facebook and wished everybody happy Eids. And I was like, what is Eids? EIDS, Eids. I literally had no idea what that meant. I was like, what is this? So I was like, let me Google it. So I Googled it, and it is a greeting that you use in the Muslim community to celebrate. It's a day of celebration for them. And again, I still don't know, like I've forgotten already what it truly is. And, don't at me. I'm so sorry that I don't remember. But when we were talking, because she and I had already established this rapport and friendship, and I said, hey, because she had posted something about happy Eids as well. And I was like, I'm not sure how you say it, but I just wanted to wish you happy, is it happy Eids? Is that right? And she just got back to me and she's like, thank you so much. Like it would normally be said, it's like Eid something else, like another word. She's like, but thank you. And I was like, well, yeah, like it's your thing. That's your holiday. Like that's your, probably like, I don't know, like Easter for us, maybe. I have no idea for people in the Christian community. I'm not sure what the parallel there would be, but just, realizing that, okay, she's not like me. I don't know what the right thing is to say, but I wanted to say something. So I literally was like, hey, I wanted to say this to you. I hope I'm saying it the right way. And I wanted to wish you happy Eids. And she was very gracious with me and explained to me what it was supposed to be. So just celebrating differences and know that we don't know everything, and learning how to learn is so important, because while our struggles are not all the same, we are all people. We have to embrace the differences. We have to see the struggles that are different, but realize that empathy part, let's bring it all back around from the beginning of the conversation here, that empathy piece, You have to be able to empathize with people and realize my Botswanian friend who does not look like me has the same kind of, I'm sorry, these keep popping up, the same life at home with kids and husband who works, and like we have so much in common. We're both people. We just have different struggles and different cultures and different things going on in our lives. So, cultural proficiency is a great way to be, if you can do it, if you can get there. I know you can. Keep learning, keep striving, keep doing all the things. So, what are some resources to help with all this? Because yay for, learning what you're supposed to do, but how the heck do you do it? Here's some stuff. Articles, videos, books, and websites. All right, this is a toughie. I'm going to start playing this. I'm going to go to this link and show you what it is, but we don't have time to watch the entire thing. It's a 13-minute video. Or actually, this one's a 40-minute video. But this is Jane, I put her name wrong. Jane Goodall. I'm so sorry. Jane Elliott. I'll fix that before I post it. Jane Elliott is an educator. She has done work on teaching people white privilege, teaching people what it is to be discriminated against in a classroom setting, and giving them a real life example of what it feels like. So this is the brown-eyed, blue-eyed exercise. Let's see if we can get this to work without ads. I bet you it's going to give us an ad. Wait.
Yes, when you go to apply for a job and it says color or race, where it says race, I put human. Where it says sex, I put yeah. Read yours.
Confused.
Frustrated, worried. Confused. Any of you confused? What are you confused about?
Why all this was going on in this fashion?
Why all this was going on in this fashion? Do any of you understand why this was going on in this fashion?
Yes.
Yes. What do you understand about why it was going on in this fashion?
It was a chance for everyone here to see what it's like for the people who haven't had to deal with this kind of thing, or who haven't at the same magnitude, to have to deal with it for just 6 or 7 hours and see what happens to them.
6 or 7 hours? You've only been in here since 9:30.
I don't even know what time it is right now. I have no concept.
That's an important point. He doesn't know what time it is, but it feels like 6 or 7
It definitely
hours.
does.
Okay. So we're not going to watch the whole thing, like I said. But I didn't show you the really hard parts because I just didn't think we needed to do more of that right now. I encourage you to watch this. It is very hard to watch. She treats people based on how she splits them into like minority and then dominant group. And she treats the minority group like minorities are treated. They're belittled, they're discriminated against, there's microaggressions, assuming they're stupid, assuming that they can't perform, assuming that they're poor, and it's very degrading. So it's really, really interesting. This is a really good way to wrap your head around what it might feel like to be a person of color. So check that out. Ben and Jerry's is pissed off, and I love it. They have had enough this week. Companies all over are speaking out about the movement. Ben and Jerry's has put all this stuff on their website. Silence is not an option. All kinds of resources are on here. It's fantastic. I encourage you to check it out. This is a really great way to learn a little bit more and have some more resources to look at. So here's the link, and then you can kind of see here, there's a couple things they have up here about what's going on. This HR 40 is a bill that is something you can stand behind right now if you want to do something that talks about reparations for the African American community. This is fantastic. One of the girls I work with for the wellness stuff works for this law firm, and one of the there's a group within it called the Black Attorney Affinity Group that put together a document of all the things you can do to help as an ally. So let's take a look. So here's some books and articles, a podcast for kids, podcast for parents, articles, all kinds of stuff, books. This is fantastic, you guys. So if you want to learn more, it's all here for you. All of it. Documentaries, films, TV shows, organizations to reach out to, podcasts to listen to, poems to read to get some empathy and understanding. How to protect people of color during a protest. Know your rights, protesters' rights if you're going to go protest. More anti-racism resources to check out. 75 things white people can do for racial justice. Anti-racism project, community change, charities and fundraisers. So we want to help. This is literally a group of black people that put this together. They're literally saying, here's how you help. You want to help? Here you go. Check it out. What is systemic racism? Systemic racism explained. Let's check this video out.
This is Jamal. Jamal is a boy who lives in a poor neighborhood. He has a friend named Kevin, who lives in a wealthy neighborhood. All of Jamal's neighbors are African American, and all of Kevin's neighbors are white. Because Jamal's school district is mostly funded by property taxes, his school is not very well funded. His classrooms are overcrowded, his teachers are underpaid, and he doesn't have access to high-quality tutors or extracurricular activities. Kevin's school district is also funded by property taxes, so his school is very well funded. His classrooms are never crowded, his teachers are very well paid, and he has access to high-quality tutors and lots of extracurricular activities. Kevin and Jamal live only a few streets away from each other. So how come they're growing up in such different worlds with such different opportunities for success? The answer has to do with America's history of systemic racism. To understand it better, let's look at what life was like for Kevin and Jamal's grandparents. Decades after the Civil War, many government agencies started to draw maps dividing cities into sections that were either desirable or undesirable for investment. This practice was called redlining, and it usually blocked off entire black neighborhoods from access to private and public investment. Banks and insurance companies used these maps for decades to deny black people loans and other services based purely on race. Historically speaking, owning a home and getting a college education is the easiest way for an American family to build wealth. But when Jamal's grandparents wanted to buy a house, the banks refused because they lived in a neighborhood that was redlined. So Jamal's grandparents were not able to buy a home, and because colleges could prevent them from attending through legal segregation, their options for higher education were really scarce. Kevin's grandparents, on the other hand, got a low-interest loan to buy their first house and got accepted into a handful of top universities, which traditionally only accepted white students. This opened up a wealth of opportunities that they were able to pass on to their kids and grandkids. Even as late as the 1980s, an investigation into the Atlanta real estate market showed that banks were more willing to lend to low-income white families than to middle or upper-income African-American families. As a result, today, for every $100 of wealth held by a white family, black families have $5.04. A 2017 study confirms that redlining is still affecting home values in major cities like Chicago today. This explains how Kevin and Jamal inherited vastly different circumstances. Unfortunately, the story doesn't end there. A big part of systemic racism is implicit bias. These are prejudices in society that people are not aware that they have. Let's go back to Kevin and Jamal. Against all odds, Jamal manages to be the only student from his high school to get accepted into a great university, the same one that Kevin and his high school friends are attending. But after Kevin and Jamal both graduate, Jamal notices that his resume isn't drawing as much interest as Kevin's, even though they graduated from the same program with the exact same GPA. Unfortunately for Jamal, studies show that resumes with white-sounding names get twice as many callbacks as identical resumes with black-sounding names. Implicit bias is one of the reasons why the black unemployment rate is twice the rate of white unemployment, even among college graduates today. You can see evidence of systemic racism in every area of life. The disparities in family wealth, incarceration rates, political representation, and education are all examples of systemic racism. Unfortunately, the biggest challenge with systemic racism is that there's no single person or entity responsible for it, which makes it very hard to solve. So what can you do? The first thing you can do is work towards becoming more aware of your own implicit biases. What are some prejudices that you might hold that you're not aware of? Second, let's acknowledge that the consequences of slavery and Jim Crow laws are still affecting access to opportunity today. As a result, we should support systemic changes that create more equal opportunities for everyone. Increasing public school funding and making it independent from property taxes would be a great start so that poor and wealthy districts can receive equal access to resources. Systemic problems require systemic solutions. Luckily, we're all part of the system, which means that we all have a role to play in making it better. Peace.
There you go. That's systemic racism. So I've seen this thrown around this week. People don't believe this is a thing. I've heard that comment a lot right next to All Lives Matter. Systemic racism's just not real. It's very real. And while it might not be happening, like there's no redlining going on today, the effects from it are still present. Everything that happened to people of color did not happen. The bad stuff that happened 150 years ago, 200 years ago, within the last 100 years, 50 years ago, it hasn't stopped. Think about that. It's changed, but it hasn't stopped. I am going to be bringing one of my very dear friends on as a guest in part 4 of this series. She is a woman of color, and she is in the mental health field as a counselor, and she has a lot to tell us that we can learn from her about trauma and the trauma that has happened over the generations for people of color in the Black community. So in the interest of learning, in the interest of education, keep an open mind and remember that this is real. And all these Black voices have been telling us for decades that it's real. And most of us are just now listening. But that doesn't mean that we can't do something about it. Inaccurate history is another thing. This is a whole thing that I don't want to get into because I'm already over time for what I said I would do. But this is a great example of cultural destructiveness. This thread on Twitter is talking about how history books reported facts to us incorrectly. Like, white people have been lied to our entire lives about what really happened. The effects of what happened to people of color aren't maybe as noticeable to us at first because we don't think what happened to them was that bad. So take a second. If you're going through this PowerPoint looking at everything, take a second to look at this. Here's some books and other media. I got this in an email from the Hollis Company because I love Rachel Hollis and her podcasts and her all of her stuff that she does, her books and everything. And they came out with a statement this week, just like a lot of other companies that were like, hey, we're sorry we're late to the game, but we have to stand up against systemic racism, and we believe Black Lives Matter, and we are here in the fight, and the social injustice has to stop, and here's some resources. So these were some really, really, really good resources. I did look them up on Amazon. They're all available right now, or at least they were when I looked last night. White Fragility, this book right here, a lot of people are talking about this. So if you are ready to get uncomfortable, and you are ready to learn, and you are ready to empathize with your fellow humans and understand the struggle that they're going through, take some of these resources, use them, share them. If you've got the aunt or the uncle or the mom or the dad or the older person in your life that doesn't believe this is real, take the minute to educate them. They're not going to want to hear it, but if we want to affect change, we have to do something. So ways to take action. First of all, don't forget about yourself. I can tell you this week I have been so engrossed in learning everything that I can and just talking with people and trying to educate and trying not to fight on social media with people who are seeing it differently than me. I've been skipping workouts, which is not like me. I've been staying up way too late. I've been eating more junk food. I have not been taking care of myself. And I know a few of my friends are in the same boat who are kind of doing this along with me. It's really easy to get wrapped up in, when you're so passionate and so angry about something, you just want to do something right now and get it all done and just, go talk to the manager, or whatever. But we have to remember to take care of ourselves and remember that this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. And we have to learn how to balance keeping that fire, that I want to help and make a change fire. We have to learn how to balance that with taking care of ourselves. Like, it's no disrespect to the movement to get enough sleep at night. It's no disrespect to the movement to enjoy your life. And I had that a little bit this week where I was like, I can't stop. Like, there's so much going on. I have to keep going. I have to keep reading. I have to keep talking to people. I have to keep putting this information together for this talk today. Like, I have to keep, it's my duty. Like, I have to keep contributing. And I lost my balance this week. I lost my balance with taking care of myself and doing this work. And it's really easy to be consumed by that. So take care of yourself, get enough rest, take the time to learn as much as you can, and don't get caught up in the negative. There's going to be a lot of nasty things that people are saying out there, a lot of ignorance and a lot of hate. And I think it's all coming from a place of fear. But it's really easy to get bogged down in that and just think you're never going to make a change. You will. Keep standing up for what's right, and eventually people will hear it. That's what's happening right now in all 50 states with all these protests. People kept standing up for what's right, and we're finally hearing it. So just keep fighting the good fight. Keep doing the research. Keep talking to people. It's a grassroots movement, and it starts with us. Down to this point right here. Be a positive, influential light. Nobody's going to take advice or be open to change from an angry, defensive argument. If you see somebody saying all lives matter, do not rip them a new one. It will not help. It will just make them think that you're a crazy, whatever, social justice person. Look at it from a light of education and from a stance of, I'm here to help you, and I'm learning a lot right now, and I think that what you're saying is very tone deaf and very hurtful to a lot of people. Can I share some resources with you? Are you open to talking about this? And that's what I've been doing. There were a couple times I said the F word because I was angry at the beginning of the week. And it's certainly effective, but it also doesn't help people to learn. So there's balance with that too. Like, I don't know if you guys saw Seth Rogen, but Seth Rogen on Instagram was like, I love that guy anyway, the actor. He essentially said, like, if you don't think Black Lives Matter, you can unfollow me and F off, and you can't see any of my movies anymore. And people were like commenting on there like, well, all lives matter, you're wrong. And he was just like, and he spelled it out all the way. He's like, F off. He'd like at them and be like, F off. And then somebody else said like, all lives matter, we all bleed the same, we're all the same on the inside, we all have the same struggles. We just learned about that, cultural blindness. And at the end of that statement, the person was like, facts, with a bunch of exclamation points. So Seth Rogen's like, at whoever, F off, facts. And it was great. It's just like, good for you, Seth Rogen. But the problem with that, while it's very, very cathartic, it doesn't help those people to learn. And they may not be open to learning. They may be like this forever, and that's on them. But if you want to affect change and you want to help, taking it from an education stance is going to be the best way to do it. You know, if you need to say F off to a couple people before you do that, that's fine too, because I did it. It's just easy to get angry. Like, how do you not see this? So we have a responsibility. I don't know why that's a face, but we have a responsibility to use our privilege for good. If you're, you know, same skin color as me, we have this privilege to have this platform to talk to other people of our color, to help them to understand where they need to be coming from, to be empathetic and to help other people. So use your privilege for good. Set a good example. The thing about leadership, the thing about inspiring other people to do better is not throwing the book at them. It is not that. It is literally starting a conversation and showing the way, being influential, being a good leader, being kind, and educating and sharing resources and not cramming it down people's throats. Because even though they may be wrong, they don't know that they're wrong, and they don't believe that they're wrong. The All Lives Matter crowd is going to keep saying all lives matter, and that's what they're hanging on to. That's what they believe. We cannot convince them otherwise unless we come to them with compassion and with empathy, because they too might be victims of the systemic racism thing. They too have been brought up in a world where it's not the way we're seeing it today. It was way different in the past, right? So use your responsibility, use your privilege. You have a responsibility to use your privilege for good. Set a good example. Seek out ways to help. This is a really great thing that I want to do. I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to do it either this afternoon or tomorrow. 8 can't wait. Take action right now. Data proves that together these 8 policies can decrease police violence by 72%. So it's a whole thing. You can go to your city. Sorry, I'm over on time, guys. Okay, and then you can do this and you can share it. There's a way to, you can email it, call, tweet, you can do all of these things. So they literally go through and tell you exactly how to help. So that is a really great thing you can do. There's I can't even talk anymore. Campaign Zero that has a lot of resources as well. Is it gonna load for me? Why is my internet so slow? So this is about ending police violence as well. So check that out. You can donate, you can be an activist. And then, how do you help? It starts with you. It really does. It starts with you. If you see something, say something. If you hear somebody being racist, using a microaggression, or saying all lives matters, or any of these things that we know are one of those first 5 points on this spectrum you just learned about, this continuum of cultural proficiency, if you know they're not quite culturally proficient and you know you can help them, say something. Do not be silent. This is the hard part. You're going to have to put yourself out there. If you want change, if you want to help, we can't be silent. We can't cram it down their throat either, but you have to say something. Speak up. Use your voice. But I can't point to it. Be kind. Be kind when you do it. Come from a place of compassion. Come from a place of empathy. Teach. Don't preach. Start a conversation. Be the change. Thank you so much for watching. I believe that was my last slide. There's my references. I'm going to share this PowerPoint with you. It's in my Google Drive. I'll share the resource list from my friend Chelsea, the one from the law firm with all of the movies and books and all of that. And then start a conversation on here if you have any questions. This is a space to learn. This is a space to ask questions and comment and share the shit out of this video if you know somebody who needs to hear these things and see these things. I know it's a little bit long, but it's I did my best to condense as much information as possible into an easily digestible chunk. So if somebody does need to learn or wants to learn, this is a great thing to share. So share, share, share. Let's help all the people. Thanks so much for watching. I got to get back to my how do I get back to Facebook now? How do I computer? Where's my scrolly thing? Where am I at? There we go. Okay. No, wait, that's not. There we go. Okay, don't judge me. Okay. I really do know how to use technology. I swear. Don't laugh at me. Don't at me. Thank you so much for watching. And go out there and be the change.